I got married to my wife after we dated for 1 year. Looking back now, I know I should have dated her for much longer before committing to marriage. We were married for 3 years when I decided to surprise my wife at work with flowers and a takeout lunch from her favorite restaurant. When I got there, I told the receptionist, Kelly, who I was there to see. It was the first time I ever visited my wife at work, so none of her coworkers knew what I looked like until now. Kelly was stunned, speechless. It took her so long to respond that I wondered if I had something on my face. She finally told me that my wife stepped out for lunch already, but she would be back any minute now. I took a seat in the lobby, right by the entrance to the building. Kelly started texting like a madwoman on her phone. I noticed a few women peeking their heads around the reception desk, casually walking by and looking at me, or creating a whisper-level conversation with Kelly. Maybe they were envious I was bringing my wife flowers and good food. I felt like a pretty good man until I saw my wife come strolling through the entrance, walking hand in hand with another man. As soon as she saw me, she dropped his hand and distanced herself. She looked really upset. She walked up to me very quickly as I slowly stood up. She asked me what I was doing here. I stammered, looking around at the 5 women and 1 man that were staring at us. It was actually Kelly that spoke up first. She asked me, "So, you're her husband?" My wife covered her mouth. She was realizing how bad this was. "Yes, I am," I said. The man walked out. My wife followed him. I tried to follow her, but Kelly and some other women stopped me. They said my wife had introduced them to that man 8 months ago, claiming he was her fiancé. You can imagine how alarming that news was. I gave the lunch and flowers to Kelly, along with my phone number, and walked outside to find my cheating wife. She was telling the man that she would leave me for him, so he didn't need to doubt the feelings she had for him. I chimed in and told them that wouldn't be necessary. I would file for divorce and put all her stuff outside for them to pick up. My wife freaked out and told me not to put her stuff outside. She had really high-quality branding items she didn't want to get dirty or broken. I was speechless at her inconsideration towards me, and I wondered how I could have possibly thought everything was okay between us. I got in my car and left, leaving her standing with the man in the parking lot. She better hurry to get her stuff, or it would get ruined. As soon as I got home, I started throwing her stuff out the second-story window. I called my mom, and she came over as fast as she could. She started helping me throw stuff out, telling me that this wasn't the end so much as it was a beautiful and exciting beginning. She had a way with words. My wife finally arrived at my house the next day with her not-so-secret man. He drove a pickup truck, and it was clear that my wife had way too much crap to fit in it. I could see the worry in his eyes. I think that until all this happened, he was under the impression that my wife was a simple single woman without so much crap. "She comes with baggage, buddy." They started loading up his truck, but my wife quit after she broke a nail and just watched him load the truck. My mom and I tried to focus on cleaning up the house inside. I already changed the locks, and my wife was pissed off when she tried using her house key. She decided to damage my front porch as some kind of revenge on me. The joke was on her because my Ring camera caught it. At the same time I filed for divorce, I turned in the camera footage to the police. She was charged with disorderly conduct, and it didn't take long for her employers to find out about it. They were extremely disappointed and fired her because I assumed they didn't want someone like that to represent their company. 1 week after she was fired, her AP broke up with her. I guess it just took him a little while to realize she wasn't worth keeping. She called me sobbing while he was throwing her stuff out, saying she didn't have anywhere to go and didn't know what to do. I told her it was none of my concern and that she should just sleep in her car. I was so relieved that I didn't let her affair get to me too much. I just kept moving forward and sought out the support and help I needed to get through it. Wow, OP. Your wife was extremely inconsiderate and egotistical. She continued an affair behind your back for a very long time, even going so far as to introduce him to her coworkers as her fiancé. She was obviously prepared to leave you for him, but she should have known it wouldn't turn out as great as she expected. It's extremely hard for a relationship to blossom if it doesn't have trust and communication. She didn't have trust or communication with you or her AP. It's so perfect that she ended up camping in the woods. What karma could have made more sense? She was so materialistic and shallow. It led her to the dirt. I wish you nothing but the best of luck in life, OP. Now for today's second story. My wife, 30, of 4 years, told me 32. She had to go on a business trip 5 hours away that included one overnight stay. She'd never had to do this before, but she was only at this job for 9 months at the time. She told me they were so pleased with her work that they chose her to be the one to go. She would be paid to do this, and it was like a nice little getaway. Since I didn't express my enthusiasm, she added that she needed time alone to do some soul searching. That was an odd comment. I asked her how she expected to do any soul searching while on a 2-day business trip. She just rolled her eyes and said I was being too technical. On the day of her departure, I thought about how weird it was that she said she needed alone time. My wife didn't like to be alone normally, and this town was so far away. I told my friend what was going on, and he convinced me that we should follow her. At first, my wife hesitated to tell me her hotel room number. She gave some lame excuse, but I told her it was just for safety purposes, and there was no way I was going to drive 5 hours to come see her on a one-night stay. It was so funny. My friend was convinced we were going to find her in bed with someone, but I was skeptical. Of course, I couldn't think that about my wife. She wouldn't lie like that, would she? We got there around 10 p.m., way after my wife got there, worked, and settled down. She texted me goodnight, but even that was odd. My wife usually stayed up pretty late. We went up the elevator and stood in front of her room door. Our plan was that if someone else opened the door, we were going to barge in before determining if we had the wrong room or not, because we had to prove my wife was in the room with someone before the door was shut on us. I seriously wouldn't have been this ballsy if it wasn't for my friend. He encouraged me to be brave enough to discover the truth. Before he knocked, I could hear moaning, but I told myself it was coming from another room. A man opened the door, and we barged in while recording on our phones. My wife was lying on the bed naked, trying desperately to pull the tucked-in bedding loose to cover herself. When that failed, she jumped off to the side of the bed and ducked down low. She screamed for Christ's sake. I thought you were going to call me on the hotel room phone, not show up here. I had no idea what to say. I was in disbelief. My friend had a lot to say. He'd known her through me for these past 4 years, so he felt entitled to tell her what a sleazy, worthless thing she was for cheating on me. He pointed the camera at the guy, and he covered his face, grabbed his stuff, and ran down the hallway. It was like he wasn't supposed to be there and couldn't risk being discovered. My wife cried and tried to yell after him, but realized it was hopeless. She realized he didn't want to stay with her or defend her at all. She hugged her knees, crying, sitting naked on the floor in the corner of the hotel room while being filmed. All I could think was that she deserved it. While recording, I asked her what the hell she was thinking. Who was that guy? She said she didn't want to tell me anything, she just wanted me to leave. My friend demanded answers on my behalf, telling her it was the least she could do to make up for some of my pain. She cried and said she didn't know what we wanted her to say. I told him we needed to leave. She wasn't going to say anything to make this better. On the way out, I told her she wasn't welcome to return home. She just screamed really loud in frustration. The ride home was pretty quiet. My friend apologized for what I was going through, but I told him it was thanks to him that I even knew my wife was cheating on me. We listened to some epic music and talked some more. He stayed with me at my house for a few weeks while I filed for divorce and put all my wife's stuff in the garage. I had a camera in the garage, so I didn't mind letting her type in the garage code to get her stuff. She arrived one day with a small moving truck. She was by herself while she loaded her stuff up. She didn't know about the camera I installed, so it recorded as she loaded some of the things I owned into her moving truck. These were expensive, and she probably just wanted to sell them. I called her and told her I just saw her steal my stuff from the garage, and she tried to play dumb. I told her to bring them back or there'd be hell to pay. 3 days later, I arrived home and my things were sitting on the porch. 4 weeks later, she called me at 2 a.m., crying because she was filled with regret. She missed me and the life we built together. More importantly, she found out she was pregnant. I knew for sure it wasn't mine. We hadn't had sex for 2.5 months now. She was sleeping on the floor of her sister's apartment because her parents wouldn't let her live with them. I told her she did this to both of us, and it couldn't be fixed. I was not going to support her or the affair child. Her only choice was to keep moving forward and make better decisions from now on. She apologized to me one more time before hanging up. We haven't spoken for a long time now. I think she still lives with her sister. I started a little business and hobby with my friend, and it's really taken off. I have a passion for it, and it makes me money, so I'm very happy. My ex's sister tried asking me for some help with rent and baby expenses because somehow it was my fault the responsibility of my ex fell onto her. I guess that's an indication that my ex isn't in a hurry to get back to work. I just laughed at the request for money. I understand times are tough, but I refuse to help support that lying, cheating woman. OP, you had to endure a very traumatic experience. To drive all that way and discover your wife with another man is heartbreaking. She clearly was not considering the consequences of her actions or thought she could be sneaky enough to get away with it. Who could go on lying to their spouse for so long without feeling guilty and terrible? Selflessness and honor should be the ultimate goal in any relationship. Consider your partner's needs and wants above your own, and even if they fail to treat you the same way, don't become bitter or angry. I believe you made the right decision to divorce her, and you certainly don't need to help support anyone. It's better to start the healing process now. You can find a woman who is mature enough to respect and remain loyal to you. I wish you the best of luck, OP. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like another one of these crazy revenge cheating stories. Husband is blind and his wife has an affair and gets pregnant. Well, he was hell-bent on revenge. Well, I thought my life was content. I had a beautiful wife, Joanne. We had been high school sweethearts and we started on this journey together, building a wonderful life. We had 2 incredible kids, Sonny, a soccer prodigy at just 9 years old, and Katie, our 6-year-old little artist who could draw like a young Picasso. I worked as a software developer at a reputable tech company and Joanne was a nurse at the local hospital. We were both well respected in our fields and the money was more than enough to keep us comfortable. Our weekends were filled with family outings, picnics in the park, hiking trips, and even the occasional luxury vacation. Joanne and I still had date nights every Friday, just like we did when we were dating. We'd go to our favorite Italian restaurant where the owner knew us by name and always had a bottle of our preferred wine ready. Our social circle was large and tight-knit. We were to go to host for Thanksgiving dinners and summer barbecues, and our home was always filled with laughter and love. Joanne was the glue that held everything together. She was the one who remembered birthdays, anniversaries, and even the little things like the names of your friends' pets. But even in this idyllic life, there were small cracks that I chose to ignore. Joanne started spending more time on her phone, even during our sacred date nights. She'd laugh at text messages and quickly lock her phone when I'd glance her way. I told myself it was nothing, that after 9 years of marriage, we were still solid as ever. Well, things would change, and they would change rather quickly. The first red flag that appeared was subtle. Joanne, who was usually so attentive, started becoming increasingly engrossed in her phone. It wasn't just the frequency with which she checked it, it was the way her face lit up when she read certain messages. I didn't want to be that husband, the one who snoops, who doubts, who lets jealousy cloud his judgment. So, I told myself it was work-related or perhaps a new friendship that was bringing her joy. After all, we were both busy professionals. It was natural for work and social lives to interact in complex ways. But then came the late nights at the hospital. Joanne started taking on more shifts. Or so she said. They're short-staffed, she'd tell me, and I can't let my team down. It was a reasonable explanation, and the extra income she mentioned didn't hurt either, but my instincts were telling me something else. She would come home exhausted, but her eyes lacked the usual fatigue that follows a grueling 12-hour shift. The mysterious phone calls soon followed. She'd step out onto the porch or lock herself in the bathroom, talking quietly, which I couldn't make out. When I asked her who she was talking to, she dismissed it as work calls or conversations with her sister, Susan. But she had a certain ringtone set up for Susan, and this wasn't it. Then there was the sudden, almost obsessive focus on her appearance. Joanne had always been beautiful, but she never really went overboard with her looks. However, she started spending more time in front of the mirror, applying makeup even on her days off. She bought new clothes, stylish, youthful outfits that seemed designed to impress. She even joined the gym and hired a personal trainer. All these changes taken individually could be easily explained. Was this some type of crisis, perhaps? A newfound sense of self? But together, they formed a pattern, a series of dots that I couldn't connect, which kept nagging at me day and night. I considered confronting her, laying all my cards on the table, but I hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if this was all in my head? I couldn't risk damaging the beautiful life we have built over unfounded suspicions. Fast forward a few months and the signs became too glaring to ignore. One day while I was at work, I thought of a romantic gesture. It had been a while since I'd surprised Joanne at work, and I figured a bouquet of her favorite roses would be a nice touch. I left work early, picked up the most beautiful arrangement I could find, and drove to the hospital where she worked. When I arrived, I was greeted by her coworker, Nancy, who seemed surprised to see me. She told me I just missed Joanne. She had a doctor's appointment. She hadn't mentioned anything about it to me. I think Nancy left the flowers on Joanne's desk and walked back to my car. But instead of driving back to work, I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do. I decided to follow her. Once I activated the location sharing feature on her phone, something we'd both done years ago for safety reasons, and saw on the app where her car was. When I found her car, I stayed put until she left the facility. When she left, I followed, maintaining a safe distance to avoid detection. The drive seemed to stretch on forever, but finally she pulled into what looked like a newly built subdivision. I parked my car at a reasonable distance away and watched, my heart sinking deeper with each passing second. There he was, a man I'd never seen before, waiting at the doorstep. Joanne got out of her car and embraced and kissed him. I felt like a complete and utter fool. We had not been intimate in months, but I didn't think it would ever come to this. But the moment that truly twisted the knife that made my world come crashing down is the fact that she grabbed this guy's hand and placed it on her belly was shattering for me. After that gesture, I thought to myself, she is pregnant. And from the look of their intimacy, I had every reason to believe the child wasn't mine. I took out my phone and snapped a few discreet photos. The days following the discovery were a blur of emotion and activity. I was shattered, but I knew that falling apart wouldn't serve me well. I needed to be strategic, calculated, and most importantly, discreet. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. Just taking photos on my phone wouldn't be enough, I thought. It probably was, but I didn't think it would be sufficient. I found one who specialized in marital cases, ensuring that they would know exactly what evidence would be most effective in court. The private investigator went to work right away, telling Joanne and her mystery man, capturing photos of their secret rendezvous. Even when she was supposed to be at work, she was cheating on me with this guy. He even got pictures of her going to a clinic with their mystery man. While the private investigator was gathering evidence on Joanne's betrayal, something told me to get paternity tests on my kids. Well, the kids were mine. That was a relief. With the help of the private investigator, we managed to obtain a paternity test. The results were confirmed that I was not the father of the child Joanne was carrying. I was devastated, but it was a crucial piece of evidence added to the rest. I really don't know how the private investigator pulled that off, because you can't just get access to someone's medical records, but I am grateful for that, no matter how he got it. Next, I consulted a divorce lawyer. I presented all the evidence I had gathered, and the lawyer assured me that it was more than enough to ensure a favorable outcome, but he didn't make any promises. We began the process of getting my financials in order, moving assets, and setting up separate accounts. I even established trust funds for Sonny and Katie, making sure they would be taken care of, no matter what happened between their mother and me. While the lawyer worked on the legal aspects, I started making subtle changes at home. I became more involved in the kids' lives, attending every soccer game, every art class, ensuring that I was a parent they could rely on. I documented everything, knowing that this could possibly strengthen my case for custody. I also began to distance myself emotionally from Joanne, preparing myself for the life-altering confrontation that was to come. It was difficult to share a bed, a home, and even casual conversations with someone I knew had betrayed me so deeply, but every time I felt myself faltering, I thought of the ultimate payback that awaited her. It was the fuel that kept me going. By the time our 10th wedding anniversary rolled around, everything was in place. The evidence was irrefutable. My financials were secure, and my lawyer was ready to pounce the moment I gave the signal. Joanne had blinders on. She was busy planning a lavish anniversary party, inviting friends and family to celebrate a decade of what she still believed was a happy marriage. The night of our 10th wedding anniversary arrived. Joanne had gone all out, renting a beautiful venue and hiring a caterer to serve gourmet food. A live band played softly in the background as our friends and family mingled, sipping champagne and reminiscing about the good times we'd all shared. As the evening wore on, Joanne signaled that it was time for the toast. She picked up her champagne glass and tapped it lightly with the spoon to get everyone's attention. That's when I knew it was time. I have an announcement. Stepping forward and taking the microphone from her hand, the room fell silent almost immediately with all the eyes on me. I held up my phone where I had prepared a slideshow of all the evidence, photos, videos, and the paternity test results. Joanne has been having an affair, I said, pausing just for a second, and she's pregnant with another man's child. With that, I set the microphone down and walked out of the venue, leaving a room full of stunned faces and a wife whose world had just come crashing down. The days following the reveal were a whirlwind of legal procedures, emotional conversations, and life-altering decisions. My lawyer filed the divorce papers immediately, and given the mountain of evidence we had, the proceedings were swift and decidedly in my favor. Joanne attempted to contest, but it was futile. It was 50-50 custody with the kids, and due to the prenup agreement we had clauses specifically about infidelity. Joanne walked away with nothing. She moved in with the man she had been seeing, apparently convinced that their love story would have a happy ending, but reality soon caught up with her. Within a few months, he left her, citing the overwhelming drama and scrutiny that came with being the other man in a high-profile divorce. Joanne was left alone, pregnant, and facing the consequences of her actions, but she got herself together, because remember, we had 50-50 custody of the kids, and she needed a place to call home for her and the kids. As for me, my primary focus shifted to Sunny and Katie. I took on a more flexible work schedule to be there for them, attending every school event, helping with homework, and doing all the things that a committed parent should do. I wanted to ensure that despite the turmoil, their lives would be as stable and loving as possible. So now, I am rebuilding my life one day at a time. All I care about now is being a good father to my kids. Well, this is just my opinion. So many people are bent on revenge in these cheating stories, I get it. Sometimes the spouse committing adultery can sometimes spin the narrative, and you want to get in front of it, understood. But in this case, they spent money on a wedding anniversary. No way I would have done that. Fuck that, don't spend money just to expose someone. Use that money for something else. If you want to expose someone, use the power of the internet, social media, emails, text messages, however you do it. Don't waste resources.